Welcome back to Psychedelics Today. This is Joe Moore coming at you from Breckenridge, Colorado. Today on the show, Kyle and I get to interview two interesting folks, David J. Brown and Rebecca Ann Hill. Today we get to talk to them about their new book, Women of Visionary Art. So not that long ago, they noticed not very many women were being featured in the visionary art world, and they decided to do something about it. Rebecca is a visionary artist herself and has personal experience to share. They both live in the hills outside of Santa Cruz, California. The book features perhaps, I think it was 18 women artists, including, but not limited to, Josephine Wall, Allison Grey, Amanda Sage, Martina Hoffman, Carolyn Mary Kleefeld, and others. So really beautiful book. Kind of large format, maybe 8.5 by 11, a little bigger, really beautiful art included. The book's kind of done in an interview format, and there's some really interesting insights you can glean here. Really fun time recording with those two. David has written a bunch of books, and we kind of get into that in the intro a little bit. He's got a really interesting and long-running background in the psychedelic space, including a personal friendship with Dr. Janiger, who's a pivotal figure in the psychedelic renaissance. So hope you enjoy the episode. If you like it or dislike it, let us know either via email, psychedelicstoday@gmail.com, or on Facebook at Psychedelics Today. We'd also love for you to review us over there if you'd be up for it. So if you want to support the show or help us out, check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/psychedelics today. You can leave us as little as $2 a month to help us keep the lights on, pay our editors, and keep bringing more value to you and the rest of the psychedelic world. If you want to check out our shop, psychedelicstodayshop.com, links from our main website too. There's t-shirts, sweatshirts, stickers, books. We've got a couple ebooks up there that you might like, integration journal and trip journal. So could be something you like. Check it out. And please do tell your friends about the show. Coming up soon, we're going to be at the Arizona Psychedelic Conference doing breath work. I think we might do up to 2 breathwork workshops, which would be pretty amazing. So stay tuned, probably report back on that, and can't wait to hear what you think about the episode. Take care. See you on the other side. Peace. Welcome back, everybody, to Psychedelics Today. Today on the show, we are here to talk about a book that Kyle and I think is pretty special. The name of the book is Women of Visionary Art. We are joined today by the two authors, Rebecca Ann Hill and David J. Brown. And we get to talk about the book, what it's all about, where it comes from, all that kind of stuff. So thank you both for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Absolutely.
It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. So, David, maybe start with your background. Like, what's your background with the psychedelics and this kind of space as kind of an intro, and then we can jump over to Rebecca.
Yeah, happy to give you a little bit of background. Well, my background primarily is in psychobiology, the interface between psychology and biology. I spent a good 10 to 15 years studying this in school and working in neuroscience research labs, looking at the relationship between things like neophobia, the fear of novelty, different brain mechanisms. And my interest in neuroscience, though, was originally sparked by my experiences as a teenager with LSD and magic mushrooms and other psychedelics that I was experimenting with at the time. And this really set a trajectory for my life because it was, I was interested in neuroscience and wanted to do research in psychedelics, but this was back in the 1980s when there was just, no research going on at all. As I'm sure you and your listeners know, there was zero psychedelic research, clinical research into human studies from, I think, 1972 until 1990. So this was me during the 1980s, desperately wanting to do research into psychedelics and just wasn't able to. Years later, I was really excited to be able to finally start writing about these experiences, I started working with MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. I worked with them for 5 years, maybe around 10 years ago, and that really helped to allow me to move my science writing, which had been more in the areas of health and nutrition and just cutting edge research and technology and virtual reality and things like that, into really being able to finally talk about psychedelics. And I wrote my first book, The New Science of Psychedelics, around 10 years ago, even though all my previous books were influenced by psychedelics, but in a much more subtle way. But in the past 10 years, I've really been able to come out and speak more about this because there's just been such an incredible opening and receptivity in the world that wasn't there before. I wrote an article in 2007 that was one of the very first mainstream articles about psychedelic, the renaissance of psychedelic research. And since then, there has just been an absolute influx, just dozens and dozens of studies all over the world looking at PTSD and, post-traumatic stress disorder, psilocybin, end-of-life anxiety, and just, using ibogaine to cure, addiction problems. There's just so much going on. It truly is a renaissance. So I feel like I've been preparing my whole life with my own personal experiences and my own personal research. And my interest in its relationship with science and art and philosophy and these different things are finally coming together. My last book before this one was about the relationship between lucid dreaming and psychedelics and shamanic healing. And then, as you know, in this new book, we finally put together, a collection of interviews with women who have been primarily influenced, if not by psychedelics, by, deep inner experiences, rich inner experiences, mystical experiences, dreams or other types of inspiration that came from these types of inner voyaging and things like that.
Thank you for that, David. Now, Rebecca, could you give us some background on yourself and how you got involved in art and psychedelics?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is obviously Rebecca. That was my birth name. And but honestly, people call me by my artist name, which is Molly Moon Sparkle. And I have a very huge creative drive. Currently, I'm studying psychology with a transfer to UCSB. And I'm also studying and kind of playing around in the field of the art program that they have there. And I'm hugely fascinated with the science behind entheogens and the spiritual experiences that we have from those plant medicines or other psychedelic compounds. But so my main work, other than just studying and being in and out of college, is I'm a painter. I paint very frequently, and I'm currently working on a project which is called the Molly Moon Magic Series, and it's all about kind of like the MDMA experience and the divine feminine. And I'm also a writer. I did this book right here, Women of Visionary Art, and then I did a previous book which I also illustrated, which was called
Ecstatic Love, Lost Dreams, and Mystic
Lost
Visions.
Dreams and Mystic Visions. Yeah, thank you. And so I did that. And I also have my own blog that I write. I kind of share my personal life experience, kind of through all the shadow and integrating the shadow, explaining different kind of psychedelic compounds, the brighter, lighter side to life. I talk a lot about herbs because I'm really fascinated with herbs and, how they can help. And I also dance. I'm a part of a burlesque troupe. We're called Gold Town Burlesque. And so we do a bunch of improv and comedy and kind of a striptease kind of performances and very burlesque and fire spinning and things of that nature. So that's really fun. And I'm very highly driven and creatively. I explore my mind, and then I just use that, and I try to be as creative as I can to kind of get all of this energy out, all creative energy.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you both have a lot going on. It's really great.
Yeah.
If I can just add, a big part of the work that I did was interviewing people. 6 of my previous books were interview collections, and that's what led to the new book that we just did. But part of I feel like my mission in life is to try to capture what the effects that psychedelic drugs have had on some of the most brilliant mind and cultural engineers of our times. A lot of people are not aware of this, and I really wanted to make the public aware before this was, just lost, to the voids of history. But I mean, there have been so many, everyone from Carrie Mullis, people who helped to, win Nobel Prizes, and people that, furthered the art and science and many different ways, just from film to books to, it's just incredible. So this is something that really we didn't want to be lost. So that was also part of the motivation for many of what I've done in the past, as well as the current project.
Yeah, you have 7 interview books, of other, interviewing other Mavericks minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talk about like the creative aspect of psychedelics, and there's a lot of stuff going on now that a lot of people are aware of with the clinical research and more in the medical realm. But yeah, I mean, the potential is, I think, really in a lot of creativity and how this can really influence our creativity and how we're culturally moving forward.
Yeah. I mean, that's really the whole thing is creativity, and what does our world need right now? I mean, with new ways of looking at things.
Yeah.
We're so stuck in these old patterns, and there's strong scientific evidence that psychedelics, LSD and mescaline, enhance creativity. Oscar Janiger's studies, like psychiatric researcher, the late psychiatric researcher from LA, Dr. Oscar Janiger, did research for 10 years where he showed that from the 1950s to the early 1960s legally, showing that LSD improved the creativity of painters in ways that was, judged independently by, blind judges who didn't know which paintings were done under the influence of LSD and which weren't. There were also studies done by James Fadiman, who worked with professionals of all different types and showed that creativity was enhanced everywhere from engineering to medicine to architecture. Besides just art and in general science, it seems like it's something that enhances creativity in almost all areas, and there's pretty strong scientific evidence from this. Even as recently as lately, the Beckley Foundation is doing research with ayahuasca and showing that it improves divergent thinking and associative thinking. So when we all, of course, have so much anecdotal evidence. I mean, so many people have claimed. I mean, there's Steve Jobs claiming, the co-founder of Apple Computer, claiming that LSD was one of the 5 most important experiences of his life. Carrie Mullis, who discovered, the polymerase chain reaction and genetic engineering, says that he would have been stupid had he never done LSD. The list goes on and on. The Beatles, of course, almost everybody's favorite music, it's all inspired by psychedelics. There's just so much important influence in the world that's really been ignored, demonized, criticized in different ways, and mocked. And it's finally being taken seriously. That's a very, very exciting time to be alive.
It is, and it's accelerated pretty rapidly. I remember when I first started to do my transpersonal degree back in when was that? 2010. I didn't think it'd be here this quick, with just a lot of the research and even just having a platform to speak so openly about psychedelics, it has been accelerating, which is really exciting, and it's an exciting time to be part of it.
Yeah, that's great to hear for you, because it certainly has been accelerating in the past 10 years. From my point of view, it's been moving at a snail's pace. Because, I've been watching this since I've been 16 years old, and I'm 57 years old now. So, it seems like we kind of thought this was going to happen a long time ago. It's taken a while, but it's finally happened. We knew it was going to happen all along because it was the scientific truth. So, we knew eventually the truth had to come out about this. But, it is wonderful to finally see it and to be a part of it.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to be a part of it, too. You can go to school for it. There's a whole school that contributed just for psychedelic therapies and things of that nature too. So it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty wild. So let's, come back and talk a little bit about this book that you guys authored and wrote, The Women of Visionary Art. This is a really beautiful book. I was skimming through the interviews that you guys had in here, but I was more distracted by a lot of the pieces of art. It's just
a lot of people say that.
Yeah, there's so many beautiful pieces in here. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys want to give us some background about like where the idea come from, and how did you guys come up with the idea to write a book like this?
Yeah, we both have our individual, kind of like a collective inspiration and then our own kind of personal inspiration. So I'll let David go ahead and give you a little bit of background behind how the book got inspired, and then I'll let you know what to do.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. Well, yeah, this Women in Visionary Art has been something that I personally, a lot of factors came together that really motivated and inspired me and Molly, Rebecca, to want to do this book. It's something I've been interested in for a long time. Ever since I've been, a teenager, I've been interested in unusual art. I've been interested in surreal art, psychedelic art, visionary and fantastic art that was unusual, that really tried to in some way capture the things that I was seeing with my eyes closed when I did psychedelics. They were so incredibly extraordinary, and I just yearned to be able to, I couldn't paint myself, but I wish so much that I could see other people doing it, and seeing this being expressed was part of the motivation for doing this book, because the past, as we've been saying, the past 20 years, there's been an explosion, of this type of artwork. So that was part of the motivation. Another reason I personally wanted to do this book is because, as I mentioned earlier, I've done 7 other collections of interviews, and one of the biggest criticisms that I personally received from doing this is that, without any conscious, effort on my part, there's been a discrepancy in the number of men to number of women. The number of men tend to outnumber the number of women in my book, and in no way was I trying to create this gender inequality, but it occurred nonetheless. And so I really wanted to do a book just primarily with this extraordinary women. And we couldn't have predicted at the time when we began this project, like 3 or 4 years ago, that the publication would coincide with, the Me Too movement and, the rising of women politically, and there's been so many outspoken women lately. So there's kind of this rising of feminine power that we feel that, there was something orchestrating the publication of this book that was even bigger than, the personal inspirations that Molly and I had. And, of course, one of the other inspirational factors for me was the relationship between me and Molly. We've been together now for about 4 years, and we've been working on different creative projects together. As Molly mentioned, we did a book of art and poetry together, and this was kind of an extension of that, a way for us to kind of combine, my writing and her visual talents together, and also to interview all these different extraordinary women and capture their vision and share it with the world. And, and now that the book has really come to fruition, we can really see what an important niche it fills in the world. There really just was nothing like this. There was no mainstream books about visionary art. Visionary art is it's really an up-and-coming and very important artistic medium right now. And I think bringing the voices of these brilliant and extremely talented women out into the world is not only an artistic service, but as we mentioned earlier, to help raise consciousness, raise awareness, and help make people eventually more ecologically aware, to realize we're all connected, and that whatever we do to the climate, whatever we do to the environment is going to affect ourselves. So those are some of the important factors that came together. I'm sure Molly has more to add.
Okay, yeah, David, you pretty much expressed a few of the things that I wanted to mention, but personally, I guess I'll go ahead and say, like we were speaking about earlier, I've always had like this really big creative drive. So obviously, doing the book was something that was very creative to do in the beginning anyways. But what actually inspired it was I was already painting, and I started delving into my shamanic experiences and spiritual realms with plant medicines and a variety of other kinds of psychedelic compounds around 4 years ago. And these experiences really altered, the way that I thought in my everyday life. And so it was so drastically different. My consciousness was so drastically different from the previous 22 years of my life, and I had so many questions. I mean, the mystery had opened up to me. I was, communing in the spirit world, and it just became like the music for, of my life. And so, through my the visual experiences I was receiving and having, I started painting them. And when I started painting them, then that opened up to a whole new world, because I discovered that I wasn't the only one that were having these like really crazy, incredible, psychedelic, mystical, spiritual experiences. And others were delving into this. And so I started becoming friends with this whole community of visionary artists. And I actually realized that a lot of the men, their work, it was being showcased so much more than the women were. And I was like, well, this is really interesting that, women, psychedelic experience has such a feminine nature to it, and paintings have such a feminine nature to it, yet it's not being voiced. And then there was also the idea that there's like a collective, we're going through a serious ecological crisis right now. And a lot of the work and a lot of the, teachings that you get behind the psychedelic experience is to heal the collective and, help climate change. And so that was like the big inspiration, was to get a group of women together, pour out all the feminine energy that we possibly could, make a book, and help people open their minds and their hearts and make people think and see what's going on out in the world. You know what I mean? So that was like the big inspiration behind everything. I'm really, really glad that we did it. And you can truly see the feminine within the book. And I think it does really help open people up and, really think, about where we're headed and why the world is in such chaos right now.
Yeah. It is a really beautiful book, and you do kind of obviously see the feminine aspect come through. And there was a part in here, I don't know if it was in the introduction or it was in an interview, but I guess it was like a little quote block from Stanley Krippner, and it was like a survey that he did, a survey of psychedelic artists, and I guess there was about 78 men and only 13 women represented in that survey.
Yeah.
And so, it does seem very dominated by men. But I mean, this book just shows so much beautiful art by so many women and how important it is to get women's voice out here in the psychedelic community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. That study you're referring to was done by Stanley Krippner, I think, back in the late 60s or early 70s. That was primarily about psychedelic artists. But yeah, it really called to attention just that incredible discrepancy of focus on men as opposed to women. And we've really noticed in a lot of the art galleries at festivals and different types of things that the men just always seem to outnumber the women in terms of the shows. But it doesn't seem like there's really more men that are actually artists than women. And certainly the women are equally as talented. So clearly there's been a bias in the presentation that we're trying to help correct.
Yeah. And perfect timing too, right? As you said, you started this before even like this, this movement.
We couldn't have predicted, the Me Too movement and, and what's happened, that we're suddenly going to have more women in Congress than ever before in history. And I mean, the uprising of women right now and women's marches. I mean, there's just so much attention being paid to the feminine aspects of the human species that has been neglected, I think, for so long. I think that's one of the main problems that we have as a species, is that it's been out of balance. It's been too dominated by men and by dominating men, and that we need this nurturing, connectivity that the feminine approach can incorporate. Or if we don't, I think that we're doomed as a species. I think, this is an absolute necessary for survival type thing, and we're being faced with a kind of collective species intelligence test right now. That's either we're going to figure out how to incorporate these psychedelic perspectives and feminine perspectives and spiritual perspectives, into our business and into our daily lives, or we're going to perish as a species, and and nature will try again until it gets it right.
I'm kind of curious, what was the most surprising thing to you that came out as you're discussing art and these women's artistic process, as you went through creating the book? Were there any like major surprises for either of you?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I guess maybe one of the most surprising aspects of the book was how much in common the women had. I mean, I guess I kind of suspected it, but I guess
I was going to say the same thing. Oh my God.
Yeah, there was so much resonance between their perspectives, their visions, and even though they're painting
a mirror, a reflection. Like you can see yourself, and you're in each of them. It's unreal. It's like we're like a divine mirror, like just a direct reflection of each other.
Yeah. So I think that the resonance between the artists was certainly a very welcome surprise. The book can, it's hard to tell when you're putting a book together how well it's all going to connect. When the book's finally done, because you're just putting all the pieces and focusing on the pieces. And when the book was finally together and we read it from beginning to end, it's just beautiful how well one artist connects with the next artist. How what one artist says expands on what the previous artist says. It's almost like they were all and planning it behind our backs somehow. But it magically, synchronistically, just kind of came together in this way that I guess was pretty surprising.
There are a couple of things that are surprising to me, actually, is that Laura Holden, she's a fantastic artist, but she is all self-taught. And, I mean, her paintings and her drawings are unbelievable. And for someone to be able to have that skill, that development and skill, and really, like, bridge this world of these beings that she's being able to communicate with in her dream state is just amazing, and how easy she's able to represent that, what she's seeing. And I guess another thing that was kind of surprising is there was, I think, one or two women that had never even touched a psychedelic. But in their paintings, you would have never even thought. I mean, because they are so similar. I mean, they are the very things that you see during a mystical psychedelic experience, but they've never touched one. Yeah,
this is, I guess, what mystics and psychedelic explorers have been saying for a long time, because they see the overlap in the experience, is that a psychedelic isn't necessary to have a mystical experience. It just makes it much more likely to happen. Much more likely. Yeah. But people can certainly have them without psychedelics. The other thing I wanted to mention that came to mind as you were saying this was that psychedelics not only increase creativity, but they also increase our aesthetic sense. They increase our sensitivity to all types of sensory experiences, visual and otherwise. So that it makes nature more beautiful. It makes music more complex and layered and textured in different ways. And so, of course, visual art is much more beautiful to actually look at when you're tripping. I mean, it adds elements and dimensions to it. So it's not just the creativity that inspires the artwork that comes from the psychedelic experience, but the psychedelic experience then becomes also a way of viewing the artwork and viewing it in new ways. So somebody actually proposed the word. It's got a message today from someone as an email calling them aesthetogens. As opposed to entheogens, because they increase your aesthetic sense, which I thought was a very clever and interesting perspective.
That is, pretty interesting. I'm thinking about my own experiences and how my taste in art and music shifted. since my exposure in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And yeah, just how much like, even just getting into the fine details of things, like even wood, when you're staring at a tree or a piece of wood in that state, and then in real life, you can still kind of pick out those aesthetic pieces and really appreciate it.
Right. Yeah, it really changes people and changes their taste a lot. When I interviewed Simon Posford from the music project Spangle, yeah, I interviewed
one of my favorite bands.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
My team, yeah.
I interviewed them for one of my previous books, and what Simon told me was that he didn't even like the kind of music that he currently does, the electronica music, that before he did psychedelics, that it was like he used to listen to, music with lyrics and bands and things like that. So that was a huge dramatic shift in, his form of a creative expression and his taste in music. And I've seen it with many, many, many people. It definitely can really shift your perspective and the way you see the world in many different ways.
And you mentioned something about two women not having psychedelic experiences. Did they talk about having like a spontaneous mystical experience, or were they inspired through dreams, or I guess what was their inspiration?
If I remember correctly, I think one of them said, through their dreams. But they didn't really say. I think, hold on, Josephine Wall was actually one of them. I have this book in front of me now.
Josephine Wall, who does beautiful. I mean, you would never know, but she said that she'd never had a psychedelic or any kind of mystical experience really, but yet her artwork, that was one of the more surprising, I think, responses that we received in the book, because her beautiful work looks as though they're visions from a DMT experience or an ayahuasca experience. She has a very, very beautiful way of representing these otherworldly realms and otherworldly type entities. But,
so when we asked her about dreams, the only thing that she said, sometimes I wake up knowing that I've been working on a painting in my sleep. Sometimes when carrying out mundane tasks, I find myself daydreaming. But that's the only thing she said. Like, there's never taken a psychedelic, never didn't say much about her dream life. But, I thought that was really interesting. If you look at the book and see her work, I mean, it's really profound.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So she says she works on her paintings in her dreams, which is interesting.
Wow,
right.
Huh?
To me,
dreams
that
are really
sounds
powerful.
like not actually all that unusual in the esoteric, occult, and kind of some indigenous traditions too. It's like there's no real.
Especially among people that use lucid dreaming, oftentimes will try to, whatever their form of artistic expression, painting or music. People paint, go to art galleries, paint pictures, compose on the piano, and do different forms of artistic and creative expression inside of lucid dreams. And then often, the moment they wake up, write everything down and can carry that inspiration to this world. So, as I wrote about in my last book, lucid dreaming can really be, if used correctly and practiced, diligently, can be every bit as powerful and transformative as a psychedelic experience, and it's completely legal. So, nobody's going to get arrested for dreaming unless the dream police come along.
I always said I wish I could record my dreams, or I wish I was talented enough to paint them, or put them down on paper like that. Because I have a lot of vivid dreams, and the stuff that can come through dreams is just phenomenal.
I know, and well, there's two groups right now. One group in Japan, and I'm trying to remember, there's two research groups studying creating technologies to capture the imagery of your dreams. Yeah, so it's going to be possible to record your dreams and to be able to post them on Facebook the next day.
That would be pretty wild.
Right. I've actually been seeing a fair amount of scientific research around capturing visual or imagined imagery digitally. And it seems like that is progressing really well. Fascinating to know they're doing it in dreams.
Yeah, they're doing a team today. I think what you've probably seen is they've been able to say, if someone looks at an English letter, they can actually decipher just from the brain activity which letter of the alphabet they're looking at. So that's a very rudimentary but beginning of just being able to code. So I mean, what you do is you have people either look at photographs or imagine different images, and then you record their particular brain, configuration and brain activity at that moment. And then when they're dreaming, you look for those configurations. So then those configurations then will be able to eventually be all cataloged, and they'll be able to eventually be able to record and share whatever you're dreaming, and maybe even, what you're experiencing on a psychedelic experience. Wouldn't it be incredible to be able to record, those wild DMT adventures in hyperspace, be able to share them with everyone in the world, and without having to go through the trouble of painting everything. We'll be able to digitally create everything with our minds. So it's when we think about where all this is headed and where it's going with virtual reality and more immersive types of technologies, these things can lead to experiences where we're going to be, completely immersed in other worlds.
I'm curious about your new favorite or unexpected artists that you learned about through this process. There's obviously very famous female visionary artists like Allison Grey and Martina Hoffman, but there's so many more, right? So who did you not know about going into this book that became really inspiring?
Well, it's interesting. Was most of the women in the book were brought to my attention through Rebecca. She's the one who really became familiar with this community. Me, before doing the book, I was familiar with Allison Grey, Amanda Sage, Penny Slinger, Martina Hoffman, and Carolyn Kleefeld. And I think pretty much in Josephine Wall, maybe, almost everyone else in the book was new to me. And they were brought to my attention through Rebecca. So it's really thanks to Rebecca. It was because of Rebecca's interaction with this community that I, partially inspired me to want to do this book. I never would have really known of all these women had not been for Rebecca. So she's the one who brought them to my attention.
Yeah, they're just kind of, like I said, it's really like a community of visionary artists. And so we all kind of connect on Facebook, and, you could see them sharing their paintings, or they meet at festivals and do live painting. And I just became friends with them on Facebook, and I was like, wow, they definitely deserve to have their work showcased. They're doing amazing work and spreading out these, glorious, very profound, messages that are important for the state of the world right now. So I was just looking through, all of my artist friends online. I was like, she's going to be in the book, she's going to be in the book, she's in the book. And we just kind of did it.
That's outstanding.
And,
Yeah, I guess if I could just name a few people that I didn't know about, who I was astonished to discover their work. Hannah Faith Yada was, Emily Kell, Autumn Sky Morrison. Her work is just really amazingly beautiful.
Lucy Della.
Yeah, it was incredible to discover these women because I did not know that their work existed.
How about Anna Faith Yada?
I just mentioned.
Yeah, okay, yeah, she's just crazy, trippy, amazing.
Yeah, and Emma Watson is another one. She really, also her work is so beautiful.
Yeah, she's from the UK.
Yeah, the UK, just exquisite, and then a few of the artists in the book who I wasn't brought to my attention from Rebecca, I've known for many years and have been close friends. Penny Slinger, whose work I love, has been a close friend for many years. Carolyn Kleefeld, who lives in Big Sur, loved her work for many years. She's an artist and a poet, and she's also someone who I've been connected with and worked on different creative projects over the years. And Allison and Alex Grey, I've also known for quite some time. I met Alex Grey back in 1995, long before anybody really knew of his work at the time. I've been amazed to watch just how popular he's become. Out of every visionary artist, he's he's surely the most well-known. And it was largely thanks to Tool at the time. Tool made him famous, and the internet, and then his work started appearing on blotter acid, and before you know it, it was just everywhere. But we're excited. We'd like to actually mention that this August 3rd, we're going to be Rebecca and I are going to be giving a presentation at COSM, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in New York, in upstate New York, with Alex and Allison Grey, specifically about this book. So we'd love it for people in the New York area to surround, So it'd be wonderful if people in the New York area could come. Mark your calendars now, August 3rd. And as Rebecca just said, that Entheon might be open then. Entheon is sort of a temple that they're building.
Yeah,
on the
sanctuary for visual artists.
Yeah, so we're excited about that, and excited about COSM in general. For those who don't know, do you want to say a little bit about COSM, Molly?
Yeah, so COSM is this beautiful building in New York City, which is the home of Allison Grey.
It's not actually in New York City. It's an upstate New York.
Or not in New York City. I'm sorry.
I didn't mean to say the name of the city now.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, so in New York, and they basically just opened up their home to make it where they have workshops, painting classes. They have rooms where you can come stay with them to participate in whatever they're doing. They have full moon ceremonies, and they've really built this up to this really large community that is really spiritual, highly psychedelic, and it showcases a lot of Allison's work. And so what they're doing is they've bought another piece of property to build Itheon, which is going to be like a branch off of Chapel of Sacred Mirrors. And you're going to walk in, and it's going to be pretty much like a visionary art sanctuary, a church. I mean, they actually are considered a church. And it's going to be a place where you can go to spend the day, or you can go and you can stay a week, and you can do like the art, extensive programs they have there. And you go, and it's a very interactive experience of all of the paintings that Alex did called the Sacred Mirrors. And so when you go and you walk in, these are huge murals too. So when you go and you stand in front of them, you get to see like a depiction of yourself through each form, energetically, the anatomy of the body, through each layers, and so forth. And it's a really beautiful place, very spiritual, and very loving community and support network. And they're doing something really I've never seen anything like it. There is nothing like it.
Yeah, it's one of the two most important centers in the world right now for the new visionary art culture that we've been talking about. The other one is the Vienna Academy of Visionary Arts in Vienna, Austria. So it's finally becoming a recognized art form. And visionary art is getting into museums, and some museums in France. And so between the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors and this new art school in Vienna, it's really becoming a recognized art form. It's still, in its infancy, even though its roots stretch back to prehistory in some ways. We can look for evidence for visionary art on cave walls. There's paintings on cave walls that are thousands of years old that show what look like, people transforming into animals and animals transforming into people, and seem indicative of psychedelic or visionary type experiences.
Mushroom. Yeah, and also Itheon is like temple pretty much. I mean, so, and it's also going to showcase, other visionary artists around the globe, so that they'll have, exhibitions for, other artists other than just Alex and Allison. And it's somewhere that you can go and, really connect with the people that are, being and having these same kind of experiences. And I think it's beautiful. and everybody is supporting them through. They did a startup, and so everybody's been donating, and it's been like a very community-oriented place where that's being built for, like I said, just visionary art and being able to come together and do rituals and not feel so alone, because a lot of us do feel so alone in the world. So this is a special place to come and really be accepted for everything that you are,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think if people haven't been there, you really owe it to yourself to get out to Cosm and especially once Entheon is built and opened. I'm hoping to bring it back to women and women and art in particular. There were some important things I think we said earlier and in the beginning of the book around how it's we really need a female energy. And that's I don't like saying it like that, a female energy. It seems like really goofy and not to mean much, but like what does that mean to you?
Feminine essence.
In essence, yeah. Like how do you think about that?
Well,
I think
I tell you. Let me tell you something that Terence McKenna told me that kind of, I think, leaves a little bit of insight into what we're trying to say with all this. Terence McKenna told me, whether this is true or not, that he believed that early on in human civilization that men didn't understand the role that sex played in terms of creating babies, and that people didn't understand that the power of reproduction was often just thought to come from the woman, and sex was something else. And when men finally made the connection, when I have sex with you, you're creating a baby. That's my baby. My became the word instead of our baby or the community's baby. And with this kind of understanding that men were reproducing, that they were the ones who were also making the children, came this understanding of, okay, so if this is my baby, this is my partner, this is my wife, and this is my property, and this is mine, and this is my country, my. He thinks came from this kind of like, male dominance that evolved out of an understanding that wasn't tempered by psychedelic experiences. He said that psychedelic experiences that, early human communities, they would, gather together on full moons and all these psychedelics together and have wild orgies. And then there would be children that would result, and they were just raised by the community. And that slowly people stopped doing psychedelics less because they moved to different ecological niches or for whatever reason, started drinking alcohol more. And as a result of this, the male dominance pattern got more and more and more and more crystallized into our civilization. And now we see this kind of really almost grotesque exaggeration of it that's kind of overtaken the world, where we see, male dominating politics and business and money, so many important things in the world. And the feminine perspective, which is a more, just from looking at the way, not just women compared to men, but in all animal species, all females compared to males, there's this basic differences. And especially in mammals, the females tend to be more nurturing, they tend to be more cooperative. These are exactly the factors that are missing in our current world and are causing so many problems that greed and could be tempered and balanced harmoniously, we believe, by a more feminine perspective or feminine quote-unquote energy, meaning just more specifically cooperation and nurturing, understanding, being nice to people. Those are the qualities that are missing from the world because people don't understand that we're all in this together, we're all one being. Those are the kind of insights that I feel are really, really driving our book and really driving our motivation to keep working on all this.
And Rebecca, could you comment on that?
Wow, yeah, well, he said a lot. I mean, I think about this very often. I mean, obviously, I'm in a woman's form. And, I do understand, like, the crucial, like, imbalance when it comes to female and male of, how women have been treated throughout history. We've been raped and disrespected and, just disrespected
burned
in so many ways. And what was that?
Burned at the stake?
burned at the stake. I've actually had quite a few past life memories of being burned, and it's definitely something that's happened through our history. But I'm not talking here about male and female. I mean, we could look at it that way if we wanted to, but I'm talking about masculine and feminine energies. And from my perspective, one of my perspectives, my theories, and I think about this pretty often, and it comes into play every time I do a psychedelic, is I'm not going to say I believe, I highly suspect, I don't like to have a firm belief system, but I suspect that within each of our own beings, we have a masculine energy and a feminine energy. And these two combined work really well together. You're in balance, you're wholesome, you're getting things done, you're expressing yourself, you're being creative, you have a bit of the drive to get things done, which is like the masculine, or a very small part of the masculine, and then you have your feminine side, which is the creation. A lot about like creation. We're the creators, so you have to have both. But there's something that happens, and on a global scale. It's like when the masculine and the feminine kind of get out of balance, things get really messy, and we can see it happening so much of the world right now, where the masculine is really overriding the feminine. I mean, you can see it by the way that we're having this crazy ecological crisis right now, and it's all because of this imbalance. And I feel like if we could not. I don't want to go back to how we were like a goddess worshiping culture, and where it's all about women and just women being celebrated, which I believe they should be. But I think it comes back to just being back in balance. And one way to do that is to share and to love and to create, and to be patient, and to really try to go inside and heal yourself, because it all starts within you. And through being able to create and share your vision and share your pain and work on that, self-healing, you're also helping the planet. And it's like it all comes back to being back in balance, back in, with your masculine and your feminine. You can't have one without the other. Just kind of like darkness and shallow, like dark and light. You can't have one without the other.
Right. If I could just add one thing to that Molly just said, about how this process, this collective process we're going through of rebalancing our masculine and feminine natures begins inside of ourselves, and that this basically is about balancing the right and left hemispheres of the brain. Which Molly calls, I think, the masculine and feminine parts of ourselves, our left side of our brain, has been shown to tend to be more, logical, tend to be more language oriented, more based on orderly sequence and symbolic communication. And the right side of our brain is more about pattern recognition, seeing larger patterns, the appreciation of visual beauty, the appreciation of music, holistic thinking, that sort of thing. So and anyone who, a lot of people, talk about being right brain dominant or left brain dominant, and anyone who's really explored these different brain modalities knows that either one of them on their own is very weak. Anyone who's purely logical, tends to really lack a lot of understanding about life. And someone who's just purely intuitive, has the same problem with the lack of logic. And it's that combination when they put them together, logic and intuition, or right and left brain, or, feminine and masculine, or however you want to look at these polarities, there's an incredible strength that comes from the union of those two. So I think that's a really important thing to understand in terms of our own personal development as well as our collective evolution as a species.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, coming back to balance, I think that is the key, right? Is trying to balance it all out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that seems to, well, that's entirely on this planet. Is you ever seen the movie Kayana Squatsi, Life Out of Balance? I think it was a popular film maybe around 20 years ago, but I always remembered that word. It's a Hopi word. And I think that describes the situation on this planet better than any other. Life out of balance. We are out of balance, and we need balance desperately to not only save ourselves, but if we want to have any fun while we're doing it.
Was there one, I guess, interview that really stuck out for you in this book?
Gosh, for me, that's a hard question. That's a hard question for me because
because they're all probably special.
They all have something unique to offer.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to answer any one particular interview because I'm trying to think. The interview with Penny Slinger is interesting because it's so deeply extensive. I think we go deeper with her than anyone else.
She went really deep.
And
yeah.
Really her whole life, and really, I think there's a lot of inner exploration in that one.
Well, there's in Penny's interview, there was an interesting statement that she made that perked my curiosity about psychedelic history. About Sandoz giving LSD to artists. I did not know that, and I never heard that in the history of psychedelics. Do you know anything about that? Or?
Yeah, I do. Oscar Janiger was part of it. He was my mentor. I was a psychiatrist I mentioned earlier who was doing the LSD and creativity studies. Well, Sandoz laboratory, when LSD was discovered, they were basically looking to see what use it might have. And they sent it out to I don't know, hundreds, thousands of psychiatrists, anyone who requested it really. And they said it can probably be used for two different things. It can be used maybe in psychotherapy to help people to uncover forgotten memories or to make new insights or associations or sort of thing. Or perhaps it could be used by the psychologist or psychiatrist themselves as a way of, quote unquote, understanding what it's like to be insane or psychotic. So they did a lot of research with different psychiatrists and psychologists around the world, and we're looking for different types of feedback to see what LSD might be useful for. And we're getting some interesting feedback that it had artistic and creative properties. I'm not sure how many researchers were involved in that, but it was quite a few.
Right.
40s and 50s.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I know Sandoz sent it out to a lot of different research for clinical application. But yeah, just reading that quote about sending it to artists is interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. Well, they probably weren't sending it to artists. They were probably sending it to researchers.
To the researchers. Oh, okay, gotcha.
Who then gave it to artists, as part of their research. But I don't think they were sending it to artists, but artists were certainly learning to do it at the time. And there weren't heavy restrictions on it like there are today. Yeah.
So can you speak a little bit about Oscar Janiger? We've talked about him loosely on the show before, but not with much depth.
Yeah, Oscar Janiger, or Oz, as we called him, was one of my best friends and one of my most important mentors during, say, I guess the period between 1989 and I guess he passed away in 1998 or 1999 sometime, maybe 2000, sometime around there. I can't remember exactly when, but he was both a psychiatric researcher and a psychiatrist, both. He had a private clinical practice, and he was well known in L.A. and treating a lot of Hollywood celebrities, Cary Grant, Jack Nicholson, Peter Fonda, Anais Nin were some of his famous patients, quote unquote, who were part of his LSD studies. So he had done LSD therapy with a lot of these different Hollywood celebrities. I know that Stanley Kubrick, expressed his appreciation to Oscar Janiger, and that was part of his inspiration for doing 2001: A Space Odyssey. And so he had a big influence, I think, on the film industry in Hollywood. And on my, and on the studies about creativity, he was doing research with artists on having them paint what was called a Kachina doll, a traditional Mexican doll, and they had them paint the doll both under the influence of LSD and while sober, and then had an independent series of judges tried to, not knowing which painting was done under the influence of LSD and which one was not sober, to judge which they thought was more creative, more inventive, more experimental in style, different things. And the LSD, the paintings that were done under the influence of LSD scored lower in technical ability and higher in creative expression, which makes sense. When I interviewed Alex Grey, he told me that he thought that that whenever he took a psychedelic, that it enhanced his creativity, his visions, but that he couldn't work very steadily. His hand would shake too much when he tried to hold a brush or something, so he could just do sketches that he would work on later. So it seems that the psychedelics are primarily good for creative inspiration that artists can then put on later. But Bob told me was that he gave LSD to a lot of different types of professional people, dentists and hairdressers and school teachers and just, all different types of people. And he said that the group that had the largest number of bad trips was psychiatrists. And the group that had the largest number of good trips was artists. So I think it tells you a little bit about the difference in mindset that artists have in general. That artists tend to take very well to the psychedelic experience, and they're certainly what we need to express it for the rest of the world to see. I miss Oz very much. He pops up in my dreams a lot. I have lucid dreams about Oz a lot.
Awesome. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Now we're at roughly an hour. I feel like we covered a lot of ground, but was there anything about the book or about women in visionary art that either of you might like to kind of wrap up with?
Yeah, didn't you want to say something, Rebecca? Wasn't there something you...
I mean, my mind is just kind of...
we did cover a lot. I'm trying to think of what we may have missed.
I guess like one of the main things is, I guess we covered this already. Like, how do we become more balanced? Or what is it that art does to create a balance or to help change? Or what, maybe about like the future of visionary art.
Or perhaps anything about advice for young women who want to get involved.
Yeah, I was just thinking that was a question that we asked.
I do. If you want to get involved in painting or dancing, making jewelry, clothing, gardening, whatever it is, don't wait to do it. Don't keep there and you say, I'm going to do it one day. Someday I'll do it. Just jump and do it, because I'm telling you, when you start doing that, and at first there's going to be so much flow, and it's going to be fun. It's going to continue to stay that way. But then you're going to start connecting with other people in the community, and it's really, really important to do that. But the thing is, you cannot compare yourself to all the other artists out there. Oh, they're better than me. Oh, well, they've already, I wanted that idea, and I had that idea, and they had it first. But you have to stay really true to your own alignment. You have to be authentic, and you have to stay consistent, and you have to do it every day. And as long as you stay consistent, and as long as you are true to yourself and your own inner visions, and you really put practice into this, then you will succeed. You really will. You'll go far. You'll start connecting with people. You'll start getting offers. And you can take it as far as you want to take it. Or you can just do it on the side and kind of be simple and just a thing for stress release, or, an outlet to, heal whatever you're going through, or to get away from whatever it is that's troubling. But I would really have to say, just stay original and just do it. Just do it.
Yes. Yeah, that's really important. That's really important to mention. And that was, again, one of the motivations for doing the book was we really wanted to help inspire and motivate and help provide guidance for young women who felt a calling to become artists, especially visionary artists. So there's a lot of attention paid to that in the book. We asked almost every woman that we interviewed what advice they would have to give to young artists. Did we talk a little bit?
I was just wanting to say one more thing about this. I found it very interesting that with every woman artist that we interviewed, each of us all have this in common, which are the fears and the insecurities. The fears and the insecurities from the very best artists, they still have those insecurities. It's just a given. So you can't be so concerned about, you just kind of have to let those go. And you just have to do the very best that you can and get the training and the practice that you need and just stay original, like I said earlier. But everybody's going to have the insecurities. So I found that it was so interesting and very inspiring for me to hear from some of my, some of the older artists especially that I really, really look up to, that they had these same fears and insecurities, but they just stuck with it and they got it done. And they really were very successful.
So keep pushing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Was there something that you were going to say, David? Before Rebecca jumped in?
I think we mentioned, I could say one more thing about just, the future of visionary art and where we think it's heading. I think we spoke about this a little bit earlier, but people like Android Jones is doing work now in virtual reality. Our friend Sarah Huntley is also now doing artwork in virtual reality. These are I think the new mediums that will become even more prevalent in the future. More types of artwork that are going to be more immersive, that are going to encompass our entire visual field, that will be able to reach inside and feel and touch and interact with. And with our other senses and in different ways, sort of combining together what we now think of as motion picture and music and hyperspatial visionary type experiences all kind of combined. I think we're moving into something like that, and we mentioned earlier technologies that would be able to allow us to capture whatever we're experiencing in our imagination, and capture and record and be able to share that with other people, and then be able to, incorporate that into these virtual reality, immersive, digital, palaces that we'll be creating in the future. So I think that where this is all heading is really, truly, the imagination is no limit. If we don't destroy ourselves first, we're at kind of a real crossroads, I think, with our species, and if we can really learn to, gain that masculine, feminine, yin yang balance, to gain more ecological awareness and more harmony on the planet, I think that we're heading towards a future that will be, will be almost like gods and goddesses, creating from our minds and turning our imaginations into reality in the blink of an eye, something like that.
All right. Well, thank you both so much for your time on Psychedelics today. David J. Brown and Rebecca Ann Hill. Your book, Women of Visionary Art, is amazing, and we really want people to check it out.
Thank you so much. Let me just also say the book is available it was published by Inner Traditions. It's available on the Inner Traditions website. It's also available on Amazon, and you can get signed copies of the book from Rebecca Ann Hill's website, RebeccaAnnHill.com. So those are the three. It's also available in your favorite bookstore. So just want to let people know how they can get the book.
Awesome. And any other quick links of where people can find any of your other work?
I have a website, and I have a page for David on there as well. And we're pretty outspoken. We're on Instagram, and we're also on Facebook. You can look up Rebecca Ann Hill or Molly Moon Sparkle, and the same for David. You can look up David.
And we also both have Amazon sale pages. Put our names into Amazon.
Yeah.
Our sale pages come up with all of the books that we've written. So thank you so much for this. We really enjoyed this. It's been a wonderful conversation. Let's do it again someday.
Awesome. Definitely. Yeah. Thanks so much for your time.
So there you have it. David J. Brown, Rebecca Ann Hill, Women of Visionary Art. It's a new book you really might want to check out. If you're looking to give a friend a gift, this is a great coffee table book and just a nice book to have in general. Beautiful, beautiful art in there. Both Kyle and I were mailed copies, and we've been pretty psyched on it. I don't think I'll be giving this one away anytime soon. So what did you think? Let us know. Psychedelics Today, email@gmail.com, or join the conversation over at the Psychedelics Today group on Facebook. We have a lot of people there. I think we're close to 1,300 folks there, and pretty regular conversation. So come join the fray, and we'd love to have you. If you want to support the show, check us out on our store, psychedelicstodayshop.com. We've got all sorts of stuff there you could buy, like shirts and stickers, shower curtains if you're up for it, pillows, I think, maybe. I don't know if pillows are up there still, but worth checking out. Some really cool t-shirt designs, and that kind of stuff really helps us out, so check it out. And if you want to get educated more on psychedelia and drugs in general, we have a great class called Navigating Psychedelics. It's pretty long, very extensive. We've got everything from prepping for your first trip to actually executing it and landing safely. We've got a whole bunch of master classes on the tail end from various experts on different sub-aspects of psychedelia. And we think it's an amazing class. So you can check that out at psychedelicstoday.com or over at our online school. You can find that at psychedelicstoday.teachable.com. And it's got a 100% money back guarantee, I think, for the first 30 days. So if you hate it, you get your money back. So check that out. We would, I think we maybe gave one refund in the last 2 years. So it's pretty solid. And I think it was only because they bought a duplicate course. So yeah, it was nothing to do with it being unsatisfactory. And we actually, our team, Marissa, thankfully, went through and improved all the audio in the class too. So just about everything that was suboptimal is now improved, and we're going to keep doing more to improve that class over time. So expect to get all those updates as they come out. All right, I think that's it for now. Thank you all for listening to this episode of Psychedelics Today with David J. Brown and Rebecca Ann Hill. Hope you tune in for the next episode. This is Joe Moore signing off from Breckenridge, Colorado. Psychedelics Today. We'll see you next time. Bye.